Order! Silence in court! Order! Silence in court! I would like to declare the case of movie trialers versus the accused now open.
Welcome to the movie trials. In the dock today is the king of crime cinema, Francis Ford Coppola's 1972 movie, The Godfather. Representing the movie trialers, your host and the prosecution, I am Smart Alec. Sat beside me is the defendant. He is the delightful, the dashing, the undeniably delectable Dalitso.
You know what? Thank you for that introduction. I am actually, if I could blush, I'll be blushing right now. But there you go. By the way, this should not be even taken part. Like, this should not be happening. The fact that anyone has the temerity to put one of the great... it actually just pains me thinking about that we're even sitting here discussing this. You know what I mean? Go on, carry on with your introduction.
The hurt is real, people.
This is not. I'm not putting this on. For how many weeks have we been planning this? And I've been just generally looking at him with like
glaring at me across the office. Yeah, it's been disconcerting, Dalitso.
Yeah, but
stop
that's
with
what
the
it is.
alliteration now. I promise.
Go ahead.
The Godfather stands accused of being overrated in the first degree. How do you plead?
Not guilty. 100% not guilty. It couldn't be any more not guilty if it tried.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, The Godfather. It is an absolute masterpiece. It is the greatest film ever to grace cinema screens. It is majestic and powerful. It is the greatest there is, the greatest there was, the greatest there ever will be. And no new films can ever aspire to assail to the dizzying heights of The Godfather. Is anyone else sick of hearing this? To call The Godfather the greatest ever is something that really irks me. It's something that's irked me for the longest time. I've had enough of The Godfather being the default best film ever. This is not the greatest film of all time. It's not the greatest crime film of all time. It's not the greatest Francis Ford Coppola film of all time. It's not even, arguably, the best Godfather film of all time. I want to look at the flaws in this film. I want to look at why this isn't the best film. Why is it so loved? Why is it so overrated? I want to observe exactly what's lacking in The Godfather that prohibits it from being the greatest film ever and in fact makes it the most overrated film ever. This is the case against The Godfather, and now I invite you, the jury, to listen to what we have to say and to reach a verdict. Thank you. So, Dalitso, you love The Godfather.
Yeah, I love The Godfather. I mean, like, watching it for the first time, it was a life-affirming experience.
Okay.
Let me be honest with you, right? Like, so before The Godfather, I did not want to watch quote-unquote old films. Do you know what I mean? Films that were before the year I was born. I was not interested. All joking aside, I was not interested in it whatsoever. But this film just got... There's the cachet of films that get talked about over and over and over again.
For better or worse.
Yeah, for better or worse, they get talked about. So Citizen Kane is another one that keeps coming up, right? And Casablanca is another one that keeps coming up over and over again. And before The Godfather, I'd seen all those other films that have been thoroughly underwhelmed. Do you know what I mean? But Godfather is one of the few films where generally from the moment it starts, man, like, do you know what I mean? From the I believe in America. That first, as soon as that,
you can quote
exactly,
it.
as soon as that Undertaker says, I believe in it, grabbed me. I'll be honest with you,
You're
mate.
a true patriot.
It's I know, no. It's like when people describe what films should do to you. Do you know what I mean? Like what films should do to you as a watcher. Like they should transport you to that world, man. That's what The Godfather.
So you'd be very reluctant to admit that there are flaws in this film.
No. I wouldn't.
Because there are some.
No. It depends what you think the flaws are. Do you know what I mean? It depends what you think the flaws are. I think every film has a flaw.
Of
Do you know what I mean?
course.
Like I think every film has a flaw. I've not seen a single film which I believe is perfect. I think The Godfather is the closest thing to a perfect film.
Every film is flawed. But
Flawed.
There are very few films
I think
near perfection.
Let me just point out, I think The Godfather is the only film that I've ever seen that I have. If you've got suggestions
Maybe
on
you
your
need to
list,
see more films.
exactly. Maybe I do. Maybe I do need to see more films. But it's the closest film that I've seen which has been close to perfection.
But let's talk about The Godfather. So. You're reluctant to admit it, but there are some flaws with this film. I have a list. I have
let me hear your list
four key points. Number one is the most minor, which is I feel some of it is just a bit shit. So specifically, I was rewatching this with a friend who had never seen it before. You're in so much pain right now.
Oh man, go on.
Fake punches, ketchup for blood. Just little things like that we can laugh at in this day and age. Specifically when Sonny Santino...
Yeah. So that's a famous movie fluff, right? So if you look at, these silly TV shows like the 20 worst mistakes in films, right? Yeah. That's a famous one. So
okay. So this is nothing new.
So this is nothing new, but
it's a flaw.
But for somebody to say because of that
no.
punch,
This is the most minor, minor of my complaints. Secondly, the length. I think it's a flabby film. Given how simplistic the film is, it's a flabby film.
Simplistic?
Yeah, let's keep going.
Oh my god. Oh my lord, okay.
So we got Michael's character development is a key flaw.
This is where it starts to get personal. This is where it just starts to
And finally, Marlon Brando's performance as a whole.
I'll let you start which one you want to discuss first.
Okay, so we've already addressed the very, very minor technical complaints. I'm not going to focus on that sort of stuff because we both,
Can I just say...
It's the 70s.
Yeah, can I just say... So, in terms of the missed punch, right?
Yeah, and the sound effects that went with it.
I'll be honest with you, right? So, that actually had to be pointed out to me. So I saw that film about, I want to say, a handful of times. So, that's still a lot of times considering the film is 3 hours long, right?
Okay, I mean, my friend saw it first time.
You know what? I put my hand up that this is me personally. That had to be pointed out to me. But I don't think that will ruin a film.
This is commonly called the greatest film ever, full stop.
It's the greatest
film. The greatest film ever has flaws in it, and I'm pointing out those flaws.
Okay, fine. That's one flaw that you have pointed out.
Okay, and it's a minor one.
I don't think that damages it being the greatest film of all time.
It doesn't, but I can think of films that don't have those things in it.
Okay, let's stop there. I know you want to move on.
We are moving on.
But you have to elaborate. You have to elaborate a film that doesn't have. Go on.
We will, but the length.
This is going to end up in a punch-up. The
length of this film. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a 3-hour film.
Yeah.
And it's boring in places. It's flabby. There are many parts that you could cut out. There are gratuitous shots that are setting the scene at the start. You could cut some of the wedding. All of the time spent in is it Sicily?
See, this blows my mind. This blows my mind that you think that the Sicily scene of all scenes, right? The whole of Sicily, the whole of Sicily. So, it's Sicily in the film is fundamental. It's as important as the restaurant scene in The Godfather, in the sense that you see the turning of Michael from this person who was innocent, who wanted to stay away from the quote-unquote family business, to somebody that is slowly turning into his father, and somebody who's slowly turning into someone worse than his father, slowly turning into somebody that he, at the start of the film, didn't want to be. And Sicily is vitally important to that. It's vitally important to that because, number one, it's the only time in the film, it's where you see that Michael has stopped trusting people, full stop. It was where you see the last bit of his humanity going. It's where you see where he marries his wife over there and see her cruelly murdered in such a fashion by people who he trusted, the people who he had closest to him, You get rid of Sicily.
Now, is this everything that was displayed, or is this what you're inferring?
No. It's not what I'm referring to.
Because
it's what that whole sequence is about.
It's needless. It's a needless scene because
it's not a needless. And it goes.
You have an unbelievable, instant love at first sight. Straight to marriage.
I'll be honest with you.
Straight to death.
Have you seen how absolutely beautiful and gorgeous that I would have fell in love with her at first sight? Me personally, yeah, she's hot, man. I'm saying that. Do you know what I mean? I'm saying
his American girlfriend was pretty hot as well.
Absolutely hot, but I'm just saying if you're in another country for a number of years where you pretty much think I may never see that American girl ever again, and as far as I'm concerned, she's out of my life. Again, you're talking to somebody who is a great lover of the Disney films. So the idea, do you know what I mean? Like, the idea of love at first sight is something that's entrenched in me and which I absolutely believe. So I totally believe that he fell in love with her.
I feel it was almost like a shock factor thing, though. It's like, oh no, his new wife is dead.
No.
No. You didn't need that. You didn't really need it.
You did.
In his character development.
You absolutely...
Because
you 100%
he's already had his father shot,
yeah.
murdered 2 people in cold blood by this point.
Yeah.
And his brother's soon to die. You don't need this.
But you did.
It's unnecessary.
But I tell you exactly why you do. So you pointed out you've had all those other characters to basically chip away at his humanity, right? But the only thing that has not happened to him up until that point that I personally think is a devastating blow, that he was sent there for protection, right? So he was there to stay away from trouble. And he was betrayed by the people that were supposed to protect him. That's what that is about. He's not safe in Sicily. He might as well be back to America. I think that lesson is as vital as anything in The Godfather. And also, can I just say, the way that sequence is shot compared to everything else in America is utterly beautiful, man. It's an utterly stunning scene. So on every count, I just think that thematically it works with the rest of the film perfectly.
Well, maybe so, but I just feel a better film would have explored his character more. Like, would have explored the sadness, the soul-searching that would have happened if the love of your life has been blown up. He just sort of gets on with it.
So, you know what? So, I think this kind of delves into what you're trying to get about Michael, which, again, I just find the idea that you think Michael himself is a flaw in this film, I find that beyond staggering. Michael, for me, is one of the most important characters, and that performance by Al Pacino is one of the most important performances in all of cinema, because you see in a space of 3 hours, you see...
That's the length of time it took Sam and Frodo to get to bloody Mordor.
You see, essentially, this all-American hero, this war hero, who wants to do the right thing, who wants to follow the right path, turn into a monster in a space of 3 hours. I think that time period is short. I've watched this film a number of times. God knows how many times I've seen this, right? And it has never, ever, ever, ever felt like 3 hours. The only time it's felt like 3 hours was the most recent time I've seen it. And that's because I've got kids.
I just rewatched it and it felt like 3 hours.
No.
I haven't seen it for a decade.
Oh.
I was checking my watch, I was checking my phone. Michael's character development.
Yeah, go on.
His father gets shot.
Yeah.
And suddenly, he becomes this man of action. He knows exactly what to do.
Oh.
He almost becomes a different person.
You're decharacterizing what the heck. It's not that he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to do. He feels like he has to do something. He feels. When I look at Michael,
when do you go from war veteran
when he
who doesn't want to be
shot,
part of these criminal activities to shooting an albeit corrupt cop and another gangster in cold blood moments later, cinematically moments later.
So when Don Vito gets shot, I feel like Michael feels guilty that he didn't do enough to prevent that from happening. That's why I think he gets dragged into the family, trying to do something to avenge that in the first place. I think that's what spurred him to do something. And that's what spurred him to...
His character development makes sense.
And I think
it does make sense. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. What I'm saying is it's not this perfect curve. It's jagged. It's not a direct... There's no direct correlation between him being concerned about his father and being this man of action who can go to a hospital, resolve the entire situation, plays it cool, he knows exactly how to deal with the criminal threat.
He's a war hero. He goes to
Sicily
for a bit. Of
course
he knows what to do.
He goes to Sicily for a bit.
Yeah.
He loses a woman who he just met. Then he comes back, and suddenly he's a criminal mastermind with no feeling. No. Again, he's
probably
better experienced.
He goes to Sicily. He falls in love in Sicily. He gets married in Sicily, and his wife is cruelly killed.
So it's a shotgun wedding. This happens in Vegas all the time.
It doesn't happen in Sicily like that, though. Do you know what I mean? Not in that way. For me, his actions make complete sense.
But his actions aren't that of someone who's wrought with wrath and vengeance. His actions are of a cool and calculating individual.
That's what makes him scary. And this is why
But it's like he's been a criminal mastermind all his life, but he hasn't.
This is what I love about Michael. I believe that at the start of The Godfather, he was always that monster. This has been my theory all along, and I've been thinking about this for many, many years, right? I don't think the story of The Godfather is basically him turning into that monster. I think he was always that monster. I think he's always been trying to suppress that rage inside him.
This isn't how it's portrayed on screen.
But it is, mate.
The way I see it, he goes from being an outsider of his family with a good heart to being a man who's the alpha male, a criminal mastermind. His wife also makes a very strange transition from being quite a strong-willed American lady who is determined to not be part of this gangster lifestyle to someone who becomes a very sort of subservient, she'll just sit quietly in the corner making the tea housewife to this
You talking about
overlord. I'm talking about
Kay, right? Yeah.
Kay, yeah.
That's not how I read Kay at all. I don't think she's ever sat in the background and accepted what Michael has become in the film. What I love about The Godfather is, again, is the final scene. You can see pretty much the horror and shock in her face to see what Michael has become.
Still making the tea.
She's still making a tea, but God damn it, mate. Like, that doesn't mean a thing.
He's gone for years and suddenly she gives up her entire life just to move back to him. Even though she's put into a car by some other blokes. I mean, it's just a bit...
Wait a minute. That means absolutely nothing in The Godfather. You seen The Godfather, like, butch gangster Italian men, like, making tomato sauce. Do you know what I mean? You see them making bolognese sauce. It means nothing to them. They're just making sauce. She's just making tea. We're talking about tea here, man.
But we're watching people making sauce and making tea in a very tight film. Marlon Brando.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
I feel that his performance in The Godfather is a very Marmite performance. And for people who don't know what Marmite is, it's something you put on toast that some people love and some people hate. And I feel that his performance is a very love-hate performance. Some people think it's one of the greatest performances. I think it's hilarious. Especially when he's ill and he's in bed and his arms are flailing around. And
I totally disagree with everything you say. But Marlon Brando's performance, which I think is astonishing.
I think in places it's absolutely ridiculous. I think it's overacted. I think it's comedic.
Specifically where, sorry?
Right from the start, from his daughter's wedding, when all these people are coming in. You can't understand a word he's saying.
I understand it perfectly. I'm fine.
No. Terrible.
You don't,
For me personally.
You don't think to even call me Godfather.
They're good lines, but the screenwriter wrote those lines. He didn't write those lines.
You don't have to be my friend. You don't even think to call me Godfather. Brilliant lines!
Yeah, he did call it Godfather.
Are you kidding me? Nah, man. No.
I personally think it's silly. Some people think it's God's gift, but...
God's gift.
I think it's very, very overacted. Pretentious, almost.
No. So, what I find amazing about that performance, I almost forget that it's Marlon Brando.
Seriously?
I honestly do. So every time I watch that performance with Al Pacino, again, I marvel at Al Pacino's like transformation. Like, it's wonderfully acted, but you always know that it's Al Pacino. But with Marlon Brando, it's kind of like extraordinary because he was relatively still a young man at that point when that film was shot. And down to his mannerisms, down to his speech, down to how he looks like, and I know that's down to costume and stuff like that, right? He generally looks like a very, very old man. He might be I think he looks like an old man from the 60s to the 70s.
Rock solid jowls? I don't know quite what's going on there.
This is what I'm trying to say. Like, he looks like what his character... So I've read the Godfather book, right? He looks the way I envision Don Vito Corleone to look like. And so it's important to understand what he is. So he is not a good man, Don Vito Corleone.
Of course he's not.
He's a criminal.
I understand his purpose.
He's a criminal. Marlon Brando kind of makes you see him as this statesman-like figure that you generally like. I don't like Michael. I think he's generally not a very nice guy. I don't want to be anywhere near him. But Don Vito Corleone is somebody who is the finished product. Somebody who orders murders probably on a daily basis, right? I look at him thinking, you know what? I'd like to be in this person. I'd like to hear him talk. I'd like his words of wisdom. And
you're describing almost idiosyncrasies of the characters as opposed to the actual performances themselves.
No. I'm talking about... So the reason I get that from the character is because of his performance.
It was well written and well shot. and well constructed. But it's not necessarily a good performance. At some points, it is just laughable.
This is a masterclass in acting from Marlon Brando. And the idea that Marlon Brando's performance in The Godfather is a Marmite performance.
It's not even not one of his best performances.
I mean, but then you're talking about an extraordinarily gifted actor, once in a generation actor.
Definitely.
I personally think it is.
He is a fantastic actor, once in a generation, and this is the beginning of the end of his acting career.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
The beginning of the end.
Absolutely not.
Once you look at The Godfather, it starts going downhill.
You know what? If you're saying it's the beginning of end, you know what? I'll agree with you that this is probably him at the top of the mountain. This is him at the top of the mountain, marveling at all that he has done and all that he surveys. And after The Godfather, it starts to go downhill. I will agree with that analysis.
It's very well spun.
But he is. I think he's at the top of his game here. Go on, next ball. What we hitting next?
You think that was out of the park? I caught that ball. Just
Go on, mate. Go on.
The Godfather is just simply not the best film of all time. It's not the best crime film of all time. It's not the best Francis Ford Coppola film of all time. And it's arguably not even the best Godfather film.
I can see where you're coming from on each one of those.
You have to understand that I'm not calling this a bad film.
I know, it's not.
I'm not even calling it a bad film. I'm not even calling it a good film. I'm calling it a great film.
Yeah.
That is nowhere near the best film of all time.
So what
because it isn't.
What would you say is the best film of all time?
Okay, well, let me just find my list. I have an extensive list.
You have an extensive list. Well, what's your list?
Other fantastic films that you should probably leave The Godfather to one side and choose to watch instead. The Shawshank Redemption.
Wait. This is where I'm going to walk out. So you are telling me, you are actually telling me that you think The Shawshank Redemption is better than The Godfather?
The Shawshank Redemption is an absolute masterpiece.
No, fantastic film.
The Godfather dreams of hitting the emotional levels.
Fantastic film. A fantastic film. I don't want to criticise every single one of these, but can I just say about The Shawshank Redemption, right? You talk about a film that's too long. You talked about a film that's too long. Wow. Okay, what's next?
I wasn't bored watching that film.
What's next?
Okay, I think maybe it's best that we work backwards.
Okay.
Let's start with The Godfather Part 2.
Okay. I love The Godfather Part 2. So in my top 5 films, right, it goes The Godfather, Aladdin, number 2, Aladdin.
I didn't see that coming. But yeah.
Aladdin, and The Godfather Part 2.
You're a big Robin Williams fan.
I love that film. I just love that film.
Okay. So, people who love The Godfather tend to either love Part 1 or Part 2
I don't think
more. It's kind of debatable.
Yeah.
But the very fact that a film in its own trilogy could be considered a better film...
Isn't a bad thing. I don't think
it's not a bad film.
I don't think it's a bad thing. But
the best film's already split just within its trilogy.
No.
I don't know anyone who said the third is...
I think you make a great point. The way I've always seen these two Godfather films... I consider them to be one film. I consider them to be one story. So when people say that, The Godfather Part 2 is better than Godfather Part 1, I don't say that as a slight. I understand why they say that because I think it's the same story. I think it's the continuation of exactly the same story. I don't see that as a bad thing. And I think Godfather Part 2 is an extraordinary film. But again, if I had a gun to my head and had to choose between the two, I would always personally go for the first one.
It's not Francis Ford Coppola's best film.
Because you think Apocalypse Now is.
Apocalypse Now is by far better.
It's a sensation. Again, Apocalypse Now is a sensational film. I love Apocalypse Now. Honestly, I love Apocalypse Now. If you look at the story behind how they made that film, right? I think
it's incredible.
I think it enhances that film even more. Like you talk about what I forget who the main actor is. The fact that he was high off his face. Do you know what I mean? Like
Martin Sheen.
Yeah, Martin Sheen. He was high off his face and just hallucinating and crap in a hotel room while they were recording it. And the fact that I know a lot of people won't like this today, but the fact they burnt a whole forest to make that film, extraordinary. Extraordinary, mate. Do you know what I mean? But
that's my point.
But
thank you.
but better than The Godfather Part 1. No, it's not.
The Godfather,
man. It's not.
just, it doesn't come close to the majesty or the grandiose nature of Apocalypse Now.
It doesn't come close.
It doesn't come close. The scale of Apocalypse Now is incredible.
Again,
there is no Ride of the Valkyries scene in The Godfather.
But
if you brought an alien down to Earth and were trying to show them the pinnacle of cinema that human beings have created, you want to show them that scene.
So can I just say that you've undercut two of your arguments for your first two films here? Because you pretty much said that, A, Godfather's too long. The two films that you just listed off are huge films. The length of them
They're long films, but the point is, their length is justified. The Godfather's length is not justified.
Which Apocalypse Now version have you watched?
You need that time.
I love it.
That is a psychedelic war fest. You have to have
versions
the
of
time.
Apocalypse Now
That
I
really
love.
needs the time to
But
breathe.
are you telling me that if you're telling me right now that Apocalypse Now isn't flabby, then
The
mate,
Godfather doesn't need that extra time because it doesn't do anything with that extra time. There's no
Completely disagree.
tension. There's no suspense. There's no intrigue built in The Godfather. There is nothing about The Godfather that makes me feel that I need to see it through to its conclusion. You can see a mile off where the film's going.
You just said that there's no tension in The Godfather, and yet you don't mention the restaurant scene. It's like if you talk to anyone that knows film and talk about tension and suspense and
No.
building.
You're getting me wrong. There's tension in The Godfather. There's no tension carrying through the film that makes you want to watch it from beginning to end.
You know, the thing is, I think you've got a, and I don't mean to be offensive here, but you've got a very simplistic view of what a film should do.
Well, it's a very simplistic film.
I think The Godfather,
feel that my view is adequate.
I think The Godfather is not a simple story. In my opinion, it's a story about family. It's a story about the changing of America itself. It's an epic story.
It's a story depicting a family of criminals.
And that's another
what
thing.
Does that have to tell you about anything? I mean, other than...
It tells you a lot about America. That's what the heck it tells you. Do you know what I mean? It tells you a lot about America. It's a side of society that people don't like to talk about.
If you want to see a good film, watch American Beauty. I think that film has a lot more relevance today than The Godfather can hope to have.
God help me and take me now, Jesus. Take me now.
So it's not the best crime film.
Okay.
LA Confidential.
Good
Usual
film.
Suspects.
Overrated though.
Heat. Goodfellas. Scarface. Chinatown. Reservoir Dogs. The Departed. Or Infernal Affairs, depending which version you prefer. Academy Award-winning French Connection. Dirty Harry. Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels.
Look, man, look.
Snatch.
Let's take this outside
The
now.
Italian Job. Hard Boiled. Double Indemnity. Taxi Driver. Donnie Brasco. And one of my favourite films of all time, Pulp Fiction.
So you've just listed off...
I've listed off most of the best films within the crime genre. And I feel that
I
would say that the majority of those I'd rather watch than The Godfather.
If you believe that those films are better than The Godfather, then we come from fundamentally different places of what we consider to be great films. I consider practically everything that you've listed off there, I think, are good films. Some of them are great films, like Taxi Driver is, again, one of my favourite films of all time. Like, I love Chinatown. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love that film. But again, it's very, very bloated. He overrated. I love Goodfellas. But again, very, very overrated and very, very bloated.
Agreed. Carry on.
Scarface. You've got no idea how much I love Scarface. What I'm trying to just...
What I'm trying to say is that The Godfather is as flawed as many of these films.
No, it's not. It comes from an era, right, where just filmmaking is completely and utterly different to the way it is.
But you haven't actually given me a reason why The Godfather is better than these other films, other than it was the film that made crime cool. But beyond that, what else has it done?
I tell you what's done. Like, so it's the only film that I've seen that every element comes together seamlessly. You have an ensemble cast which are on top of the game. Like, I don't care what you say. You can't pick a single actor in this film who I think is subpar.
I know.
That's the thing. And do you know what really blows my mind? The guy who plays Fredo is probably the most talented guy out of the lot of them. Out of the lot of them, you have an incredible ensemble cast which knits together perfectly. Now, I've seen films that have star-studded casts and they just don't work. This one just does. You have a soundtrack which is as good as anything that I've ever listened to. But the Godfather soundtrack is it's operatic, it's epic. It gets you into it transports you into this film, into this world, and that's what soundtracks should do.
It's one of the key drivers that makes me want to leave this world as quickly as possible find another film to watch.
Do you know what it
because
makes
it's nearly as boring as the film.
Do you know what it makes me want to do? It makes me want to entrench myself on that sofa and carry on watching the film. And I think it is note perfect, that soundtrack. And also,
it sets the scene, but it's ultimately average as far as Academy Award winning films soundtracks go.
So and also cinematography. I think what's the bloke's name? Gordon Willis, I think his name is, right? I think these elements to that high standard, in my opinion, is unseen in any other film. That's my main point, is that you could talk about films that have got a great cast, that have got great sound, and who's got great cinematography, but none of them, not a single one that you've read off, has got it to the standard that The Godfather has. You read what the majority of film critics say, they will not tell you this is one of the greatest films of all time.
It's a bloated film, it's boring, it doesn't do that much that's actually that original. It doesn't have... Okay, so this is... We're now moving into my final point as why it's not the best. I feel that it's lacking. It is lacking key elements that it requires to be considered the best. It doesn't have that epic cinematic nature. It's not Lawrence of Arabia. It's not Gandhi. It's not Apocalypse Now. It doesn't have this sweeping scope. Okay, it doesn't have the emotional depth.
Wait.
It doesn't have
sweeping scope. You just said that you wanted to cut the whole of Sicily out of this film.
That's not
sweeping
scope. You're misinterpreting what I'm talking
okay,
about scope.
Define scope. Define it.
I'm talking about scale. I'm talking about epicness, and this film doesn't have that.
Go on.
So it doesn't have the emotional depth that I would expect to find in the best film of all time. In The Shawshank Redemption, I was nearly in tears by the end of that film.
This man crawling through shit to get out. No, alright, okay. Fine, there you go. Alright.
But The Godfather did absolutely nothing for me from that point of view. And it just doesn't have the power that I would expect from the best film. Schindler's List, for example, is such a good shout.
Such
a deeply powerful film.
Yeah.
I don't see how you can put them side by side and say they're on the same level.
I would put Schindler's List side by side Godfather and say Godfather's a better film every single time.
I don't think it has the deep introspection on the human condition.
I don't think a film has to make you cry or touch you profoundly.
But surely the best film should, when there are so many films out there that do.
No, so I completely disagree with your analysis of what makes the greatest film of all time. Let me put it to this way, right? There is nothing that I personally identify with when it comes to the story or the characters within The Godfather, apart from the fact that I have a family. But the film transports me into that world and makes me feel that I know these people, I know their situations. It puts me into the mindsets of one of those characters. I think for a film to do that, for a film to get you in that sort of way where you have no connection to what it's talking about, for it to grab you, it's a very powerful thing indeed. And I think that's what cinema should do. First and foremost, that's what any cinema should do. Do you know what I mean? I am sitting next to these people. I'm experiencing what these people are experiencing. If it can't make you feel that on any level whatsoever, then it's not worth watching.
But you still haven't given me anything that makes it the best. Because you could go through IMDb's top 250 and beyond and find almost every film ticks that box.
So I'll keep saying it over and over again. The reason why I think The Godfather is the best is because it hits those points to a standard that no other film that you've mentioned or that I have seen has done so.
But where's its standout moment that just elevates it? Where's its Ride of the Valkyries? Where's its charge on the Plymouth Fields in The Return of the King? Where's its Battleship Potemkin moment?
Specific to your question, what elevates it? And this is, again, shows why I love this film, because you've talked about big, grand set pieces there, and I will always, to the day I die, point to that restaurant scene to being one of the greatest scenes of all time. And here's the thing what I love about The Godfather is because I believe some of its greatness is down to the fact that it's luck. I believe some of this greatness isn't down to the fact that they planned it that way. I believe some of this greatness is flat down to luck. So if you read about what happened in that scene, Almost all of it's down to luck. Down to the fact a train happened to be crossing at that specific moment when Al Pacino has to look like he's making his decision up. It was all luck. That whole scene is perfect. You're talking about a scene that elevates this film to greatness. The ones that you've listed there before. That restaurant scene is better than all of them.
That's a very insular, it's a very small, it's a very personal scene, and it's very well done.
It's a pivotal scene.
It's pivotal, yeah.
Which changes the whole trajectory of the film.
The stabbing scene in Psycho. So's the fight between Darth Vader and Luke in The Empire Strikes Back.
So let's take those three scenes. I believe the restaurant scene is better. Any self-respecting good director and cinematographer can shoot those scenes in Star Wars. Psycho, right? People shot exactly the same scene in Psycho. You can't reshoot the one from The Godfather. You can't do it. What they did is they captured magic on film, and they can try and shoot that. They will never do it again.
Do you understand what I'm saying, though, when I say it just lacks something that elevates it?
No, I don't agree with the premise of your question.
The last point I have to make is, what impact did The Godfather really have in the grand scheme of things, other than make crime popular for a decade?
See, that's an amazing question, because it changed everything. It's the point of reference to almost every crime film that's come after it. There's a before and after Star Wars, right? There's sci-fi made before Star Wars, and there's what happens after. Star Wars changed everything. Exactly the same with The Godfather. You can't make a film that's even remotely about family drama or a crime film. You can't make a film that's like that without referencing The Godfather.
I'd also say its subject matter is very limiting. If you're talking about the greatest film, you're talking about criminals, talking about American criminals. I feel that Star Wars has mass appeal. It's fantasy. It's a very isolated topic.
I don't think that's a valid argument, because you can look at Schindler's List. That's a very isolated story.
But that's highlighting horrors of the past.
I get
The Godfather is almost popularising
horrible people.
You could argue that.
If you'd argue that, saying that The Godfather fetishises criminals, you'd be 100% right. You can't lower your view of The Godfather because of the subject matter. I don't think that's a good enough reason to say it's not the best film of all time.
Some people would say it's immoral.
And they'd be wrong. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, what we're talking about here is a film. It's a piece of fiction.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's a common misconception that it isn't actually a piece of fiction.
It's just a Mario Puzo book. And this is the problem I have when people try to put some sort of correlation between entertainment and real life. I don't believe there is any. There shouldn't be. I think you watch this and you should watch it as a piece of film, because that's exactly what it is. Just the way you should.
And if that was the case, more science fiction films would have received Oscar wins.
And I absolutely believe science fiction films should receive Oscar wins. But that doesn't mean that the science fiction film that you're talking about, and I'm thinking you're talking about Star Wars, is better than The Godfather, because it's blooming not. It's not.
I have evidence to present to the court. The Godfather is the greatest film of all time. It's won that accolade from many establishments. So I'm just going to read a couple of them out. It's Entertainment Weekly's greatest film of all time. It's Time Out's greatest film of all time.
Great establishment.
It's Empire's greatest film of all time.
Empire is not to be scoffed at, by the way.
It's Hollywood Reporter's greatest film of all time.
Again, great
These were all polls.
You're saying this is not the critics, right?
This is not the critics, these are the people. The common man has decided...
Who's the only one that matters in this conversation.
All the establishments where it gets its accolades are all polls. IMDb, it was number one for a very long time. I feel that The Godfather has a very specific place in our society. I feel that it's the film that people who don't necessarily watch that many films love and call their favourite film.
Yeah.
It's culturally the man's film. In the same sense that football is the sport that all men must love.
Oh, man.
The way that Call of Duty is the game that every man should love. I feel that The Godfather is the film that every man should love, and it's almost like a social thing. Like, if you don't like The Godfather, you're not even a man.
You are 1 in a million. Alec, do you know what I mean? You're 1 in a million.
And that makes me deeply sad.
Do you know what I mean? You're 1 in a million in a sense.
I feel that I'm the only one with my eyes wide open.
Do you know what I mean? Like, thank goodness you are a rarity of people in the English-speaking world that believes that Godfather is overrated. Because I would lose all faith in humanity if the majority of people looked at me and said the Godfather is not as good as
I can't believe that
Redemption.
so many people will sit there and say this is the best film and then not explore other films.
Do you know what? One thing I love about life, that one day I may watch a film better than The Godfather. And that's why I love cinema. I tell you that. You know what the problem is? And why I think The Godfather may not be bested? It's not because I think it's so great that it could never be bested.
It's because it wasn't the best in the first place.
No. It's because filmmaking today doesn't take the same risks filmmaking did make then. Right, so the evidence I have to present to the court is the fact that The Godfather won 3 Academy Awards. Off the top of my head, I think it won Best Actor for Marlon Brando. Of all people, right?
I know. I was fully aware of this
right.
going in.
Best Screenplay?
Yeah.
For Mario Puzo, and Best Picture.
Best
now,
Picture.
I know the Academy Awards gets things seriously wrong quite a lot. I'm angry it didn't get Best Cinematography. That actually hurts me that it didn't get that.
Now, that's maybe an award that I feel it deserves. My retort to the point that it won these awards, specifically Best Picture, is the point that there wasn't much competition that year.
Okay.
The next best film was probably Deliverance.
Yeah.
What other good films came out in 1972?
Yeah, but
Not
that's
many.
the Academy are a stubborn bunch. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not going to disagree with that.
There are a lot of great films that have never even got a look in it. The fact that The Godfather did, I think, deserves some sort of respect. The Godfather is just one of the rare films that stand on its own 2 feet. All of you who have never seen The Godfather, please, dear God, all 12 of you, please. Just watch it. Just watch it and you see.
And all of you who have seen The Godfather, please go and watch some other films. Get a life. Come on, people.
You know what was really scary, right? You say that and it's true. When I was younger, I used to watch Godfather on a scarily regular basis. Like, it's scary because I was rewatching it after actually about 2 years. And it's scary that even after 2 years, how much of this film I can quote. But yeah, it's fantastic.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, when somebody tells you a film is the greatest ever made, what do you expect to see? I expect a cinematic tour de force. I expect a film that will take hold of me, my thoughts and my emotions, and by the end give me an entirely new perspective on film and life itself. This film did not do that for me. It doesn't have the depth, it doesn't have the spectacle, it doesn't have the grandeur. It's a very well-made, but ultimately simple crime film. There's better films out there, and I implore you not only to go out there and broaden your horizons, but to find this film guilty of being overrated in the first degree.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what you've heard there is somebody who has an irrational hatred of the greatest film of all time. What you have with The Godfather is something that you don't have with films that are made today. You don't have this big budget, special effects, spectacle of a movie. You have something that is essentially, when you break it down, is about people. This is a film which was made on $7 million, and you get something that feels like it was made for so much more. You get something that feels epic, but it feels personal. I think The Godfather is the greatest film of all time because it influenced films up until today. You can't make a gangster film. You can't make a crime film without looking back to The Godfather. And how many films really can you say that about?
Okay, so that wraps up the case of movie trialers versus The Godfather.
Yeah.
Thank you, audience, for joining us. The Godfather's fate is down to your verdict. Guilty or not guilty, the decision is yours.
God damn it, this is a great idea.
I would also like to thank my guest, the defendant, the Downright Delicious
There you go.
Dalitso. Thank you for coming. Have you
pleasure being
enjoyed
here.
yourself?
I have. But all of this is all been outrageous. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, it's all been outrageous.
You're rather passionate about this film.
You know, I came in here with a rage. There's nothing I'm quite as passionate about.
This has been building up for about at least a couple of months.
Oh, good Lord of mercy.
But it's been good. Thanks for coming.
No problem, mate.
So, right, thanks again. That's all we've got time for. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Be sure to check out our other movie trials and be sure to have your say. Comment below. Any support will be appreciated. We have been the Movie Trialers. Goodbye for now, and until next time.
Order! Order! Silence! Members of the jury, you decide. Based on the evidence presented in court by both parties, what is your verdict? Guilty or not guilty?